everyone, and welcome to the Bendigo Tech School's TinkerCad design tutorial. We are creating tactile tools for sensory learning today. So researchers found that sensory activities, in addition to being fun, encourage students to explore and investigate. These sensory activities support students to use their scientific method of observing, forming a hypothesis, experimenting, and making conclusions. Sensory activities also allow students to refine their thresholds for different sensory information. This helps their brain to create stronger connections to sensory information and learn which are useful and which can be filtered out. For example, a student may find it difficult to play with other students when there is too much going on in their environment and conflicting noises or sights. Through sensory play, the student can learn to block out the noise which is not important and focus on the play which is occurring with their peer. Other reasons sensory play is beneficial for students include it helps build nerve connections within the brain, it encourages the development of motor skills, it supports language development, it encourages scientific thinking and problem solving, and it can involve mindful activities which are beneficial for everyone. The desire to engage with sensory play comes naturally for students and should be encouraged and supported both at home and in the early learning environments. So today we'll look at creating a sensory tactile tool that can be used within the classroom using TinkerCad design to 3D design and then 3D print at a later date. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to type in tinkercad.com. This will take you to the main page. Now I've already signed in, so I can't show you what the main page looks like, but all you need to do is create a free account. Now you can use this using your own personal email address or even your teaching email address, and then once you've got that, you will be shown to this dashboard here. Now this dashboard here is where all your designs will sit once you've created those. So you have the option of 3D designs, circuits, code blocks, as well as this new item called lessons. These can be set up, so if you're teaching 3D design, you can set up some lessons that your students can complete, and that is found here. So you'll also see here up on the top right tabs, you'll see that it has classes. What this will take you to is some tutorials that you can participate in to extend your learning further. Another way you can extend your learning further is through YouTube. That has a really great range of tutorials from both the TinkerCad team or even just professionals that have had a go at TinkerCad design. You'll also find on the bottom left corner of the screen different socials that you can follow that are partnered with TinkerCad, so that's a really great way to sort of see what's happening in the TinkerCad space. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a new design. So if you click that button here, it will take you to your design plane. Right here we have our work plane in the blue, and I'm just controlling the zoom by moving my scroller, but you can also control it with the buttons on the left hand side here, so we've got minus and plus. You'll also find on the top left corner this cube here. This cube will allow you to move your work plane around, so this can be done by holding and moving your mouse. Alternatively, you can click on different faces of your cube and that will move you down different parts as well. So if I click the top, it will move you to a bird's eye view of the work plane. I personally prefer to stay at a 45-degree angle between top and front, as this allows me to see my design from the best angle, and then I just adjust it accordingly. Once you start your design, it's really important to first name it. So every TinkerCad design that you start will have a name allocated, and these are just random names that have been created. So I usually click on that and change the name. So because we're creating tactile sensory tools today, I'm just going to call that tactile sensory tool number 1, which I've already started. Okay, so that is that part of the screen. On the bottom right corner, we also have edit grid. So this will allow you to edit your work plane. So at the moment, it is a 200 by 200 mil work plane, so just a square, which I work with well, so I'm going to stick with that. Otherwise you can change that, so you can change to inches if that's what you're more familiar with, or bricks, but I find millimeters works just well with students. You also have width and length here, so you can turn it into a rectangle if you choose to do so. It all depends on the size of your 3D printer that you'll be using at the end. It also just helps you keep it in your mind about the size of the design that you're creating. It can be quite easy to be quite extreme with your measurements on 3D design, so this just keeps it all within a 200 by 200 mil practice. I find a really good tip to have a ruler next to me when I'm doing 3D design, just because, you know, it's easy enough to see it on a screen, but to physically see it in front of you with a ruler, it helps you just conceptualize that a little bit better as well. So that's a great tip to have, is just to have your ruler next to you. Another tip I would also recommend is to design your 3D design on paper first. So you can do this by many different ways. You don't have to do it 3D, you can do it 2D on a piece of paper, and then that way you can go in with a bit of an idea. But if you prefer to just design as you go, you're more than welcome to do that as well. It just depends on your time. So you'll also see on the right hand side here we've got work plane and ruler. So sometimes I like to include the ruler in my work plane, just so it gives me a bit of a concept as well about how big the different sizes are. As you can see, I haven't put that on correctly. There we go. That's something that also helps you out. Now you'll see we've got basic shapes. So we've got all these different shapes that we can use, and the idea is you've got basic shapes that you build upon from each other. So you can use these different shapes to plus or minus different shapes from each other, which will all make sense once we start doing this. If you click on this little arrow here, you'll also see other options. We've got text and numbers, so if you want to include personalized letters, you can do that too. We've got characters, so hands, flippers, masks, glasses, all that sort of stuff. So if you're creating sort of a character, you can use those as well. Now, connectors can be used if you are creating multiple pieces of an item on TinkerCAD. So if you were creating a character, for example, and you wanted to build their body, you could add in these different connectors, and they all have partners within each other. So we've got the ball socket and the rotating ball socket as well. So you can combine them together. So then when you print them, they'll stick together and move freely. So that's another option there if you want to use those too. We also have circuits and printables. So if you want to have just a design in your classroom, as an example, the dinosaur is a really great option. It gives you all the pieces of the dinosaur, including the different sockets to help it move as well. So that's a great option to have. And you can just place them all and print them. So that's really cool too. And students can build them a little bit like a puzzle. But we're going to start with our tactile sensory tool. So it depends on what kind of tactile sensory tool that you would like to use. I'm going to create a tactile sensory tool that is quite easy to copy, and I'll show you how we're going to do that. So the sensory tool that I want to create today is something that the students can handle and feel. It can be turned into a key ring, so you can create multiple tactile sensory tools and attach them to a key ring. It's just a great option. And you can stick it to a keychain or something like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a box on the screen. And now you can see that there's two types of boxes. We've got a coloured, and here we've got ones with stripes on it. The striped items actually refer to transparency, okay? So if anything has the stripes, you know that's not going to be printed, and I'll show you how. So if I zoom in here using my keypad, you will see that we also need to click and drag different parts. So I'll need to move along like this, okay? You will see that it has snapped to the work plane because I can't see any gaps, all right? So that's really crucial. If I was to move this up and down using this arrow here, I can see how many millimeters it's actually going above the screen or below. So I want it to stay on 0. If you're there, you could also just type it in and it will move as well. Alrighty, so I'm going to move back to my 45-degree angle because that's when I work best. Now, I don't want to build a cube. Okay, so what I would do is I would select one of these tools and move it like so. So that's 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 3. I'm going to keep it at 3 for now. I also know that's not the size I want. So I'm going to go to my bird's eye view and I'm going to expand it using one of these tools here, okay? So as you can see, it is changing on the left and the bottom of the screen as well. So I'm just going to make it probably around that big. Okay, so I'm going to make a rectangle, and there we go. There's my first tool. Now, as you can see, that is just the base of what I'm going to create. Okay, just the base. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to start adding things to my base that the students can then touch. Okay, so it's all about that sensory tactile resource. So we're just going to add things that they can touch. So as you can see here, we've got lots of different options, and it's really important that it's a safe option. So we don't obviously want to create lots of points because that can be quite sharp as well. So we don't want that. So what I might do is I might use the round roof tool. Okay, now as you can see, that is quite a large item. So what I'll do is I'll move my screen around, and this does take a little bit of practice to get used to. Sometimes it's easier using a mouse, sometimes it's easier using the trackpad on your laptops. Oh, there we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just move it away from my rectangle for now, and I'm just going to change the shape here. Okay, so there we go. So as you can see, that's already changed the shape so much, but it's quite high. That is all fine because when I move it, it will show me that it's 10 high. So I'm just going to adjust the height a little bit. I'm going to change it to about 7. Perfect. I'm actually going to move this across, if you have a look, to here. Now I don't know what that looks like from the top, so I'm going to move this and see. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's going. You can also use your up and down and side arrows to move along if you want just a little bit of movement. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how that looks. But as you can see, that's still 2 separate objects, and that's not what we want. So when we want to combine objects so they print as one item, you're going to select one item, hold Shift on your keyboard, and select the second item. You'll then see that we have options here. So we want to group the options together, and you'll notice as soon as I group those options, the color will change. There we go. So now we have 2 separate items. The color is now both changed to red. Now, just because it's red doesn't mean it will print red. That all comes down to your 3D printer. But it does help you see clearly. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that, but I'm going to show you a little trick. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, and that's going to undo my grouping. I'm going to then copy and paste all the different items because I want them to be the same size. And the good thing is being a tactile tool, it doesn't have to be symmetrical because we're all about the different feels on this tactile tool. This will all make sense once it's all grouped together as well. Now obviously you can make this quite even and symmetrical, that is fine too. I'm just making it not symmetrical to give that option. Now it's probably easier for me to see it on the screen here. Another option you can do is see how I've got overlaps. I can actually select those tools, go to the top right corner and align. It's not aligning, that's okay. So you can do lots of those ones. So that can be one option for you. What you then need to do is select all and then group together. So that's one part of our sensory tool. We might also want to personalize it with some text, okay? So you just drop that anywhere on the screen. I'm gonna make that a lot smaller. And when we want to edit our text, select on our shape, and I'm going to type in Miss Gray. Then that way the students know that it's my tool and it belongs to my classroom. Cool. Now I can't see it, so I'm going to go back to my 45-degree angle and raise the cone. There we go. Great. So I'm going to hold Shift on both items and I'm going to group them together. So now when that prints, it will come up with that as well. So that's another part of the sensory tool. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to add these to a key ring so that I can hold all of my tactile sensory tools together. So what you're going to want to do is grab the cylinder. Okay, so I'm going to grab the coloured cylinder for now just to show you how you can change it. So we know a keyring is quite big. We're going to have a few items. We want it to move around the keyring, so I'm going to move it to about that big. Now, obviously, this is me just going off measurements at the moment. You can clearly measure the size of a regular keyring hole and also do that. So I'll add that in the corner there. Hopefully that is, I move that around and zoom out. Yeah, it's not going to go over. I'm just going to shorten that a little bit just for, there we go. I moved it down a little bit. As you can see, it's gone through the bottom as well. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click hole, and that's going to make that transparent, okay? So when I group these together and I move it around, you will see that it has now got a little hole in the corner. So when it prints, it will not print this item. Okay, so there we go. We've got our first tactile sensory tool. So you can add more sensory items to that if you want. Obviously, you don't want to have too much on there because you want to keep them separate. So what I might do is I might copy and paste this exact same size, keep it all on the same printer bed. But instead of keeping it all together, I'm going to hit Ungroup and see how all my items are now not grouped together. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to delete. Oh, I need to ungroup that as well. Ungroup. There we go. So now we can see that my the different shapes are now back to their regular colour. So I'm going to get rid of those round shapes. So we'll just delete them all. So the good thing is with the tactile tool is that you have a lot of free design. So you could make these however you wanted. As long as they've got that sensory element of 3D shapes, you can do whatever shapes you like and it will change and give that different feel for students so they can focus on the one task. So the next one I might do is I might do the tube. Okay, so I'll click the tube. You don't have to make this one. I might keep it a little bit bigger than the other ones just to give that different feel. So again, I'll select my corner, I will shrink it. I'm just going to keep it orange for now. And I'm going to move that across. Oh. Now, if you make any mistakes, you can easily hit Control-Z and it will take you back to where you were. Because it can be quite fiddly sometimes. So what I'll do is I'll just move my item across. Cool. So that is now sitting on top. I might do, we could do some supertizing numbers in this as well. That's a great option to do. So I'll copy and paste. So we might do like a dice number of 4. And it's just a matter of copying and pasting the same. So I can now see that they're quite high up. So I might shrink them a little bit. So I can do that by copying them all, like holding Shift, and I might change them to 5. Yep, okay, so that's still a bit low. I might go 8. Perfect. So that's another option. Obviously, it's still a safe item. Now what we need to do now is we need to select everything and group them together so then they're all the same colour. Awesome. We have now grouped them together and I'm also missing my cylinder so I can just print that again. So as I can see, it's still too big. I'm going to have to shrink it a little bit. And then I'll just use my arrow keys to move that along. Hold shift on both items and we group. Oh, and there we go again. Now as you can see, they haven't aligned correctly. That's totally fine for this example. We're not printing yet. So that's fine. So there's 2 items that you can add to your tactile sensory keyring. Again, you can now change the shape. So we've used 2 rectangles, different items on there. We can now make even a circle one if that's something that you know your students would prefer. And what you can do is you can make multiple circles. So I'll just move these across the screen. So they haven't stuck, that's okay. So what I might do with this one is I might make multiple of the same circle straight away. I might just check how tall it is. Yeah, so that's still quite high. I might shrink that just a little bit. Yep, that's good. All right, back to our bird's eye view. So if I copy and paste the same shape, I know they'll be the same size. I might actually go back a step and I will put my ring in straight away. There we go, that's about the middle. And I'm going to combine them straight away. And there we go, we already have our ring, perfect. So this can be used in so many different ways. You can make your own counting tools as well, but at the moment these are just tactile tools. Okay, so I might leave it at 5, and you will notice I'm trying to use up as much of my work plane space as well. Now do keep in mind this isn't a large item that you're printing. It is only 20 by 20 mil, so 200 by 200 mil, so just keep that in mind that these are still quite small. Obviously if you'd like to make them a lot bigger, you could make the circle or the rectangle the size of the whole work plane and just add lots of different sensory items that can be touched. Otherwise you can just make a small item as well. So what I might do is I might use the scribble tool. So this is a really good tool if you want to personalize or make really different ones. So see how it's gone out of that screen now? It's actually gone into sort of like a drawing pad. So you can now use the pencil to draw different things, and anything you include in this drawing pad will then be turned into an item. So I'm just going to make different squiggle lines. And as you can see, it's now created that as a 3D item. Cool. So now we can go done. And that is quite large. So I'm going to make that smaller and make it shorter. Yep, that's good. And I'm just going to include that there and then move it up a fraction. Okay, so it's just showing on my screen, which is great. So I can just copy and paste that and move it all around. So it sort of looks like spaghetti on there. So that's one way. Another thing you can do here is you can use the rotating tool here. So if I want to move that around, I can, which I will because it is a circle. Copy and paste is our friend. Move that around and I will rotate it again. Again, this is all completely up to you how you want it to look. You can personalize it for the class that you have. You can also, You can also, if you're making it for individual students, you can type their name onto it as well. That's a really great option. But again, if you give it to one, you have to give it to them all. So you'll have to make a whole class set, I'm sure. So there we go. There's one that we've made. Now, again, it's all separate. So it will print separate. So the aim is to make sure that your item is all the same color. So I'm going to hold Shift and click on all my little spaghetti strands. And then on my circle as well. And then I'm going to go group. And it should all change the same color. Perfect. It is now blue. So now I can see that that item is ready to go. So I'll be able to thread that on a piece of string or a keyring or something else. So you can do that repeated for the rest of your items on there as well, but that just shows another way that you could have it. I personally think it works really well on a keyring or a piece of string, just so it can stay all together. But if you are clever, you could probably even make a pole for them to sit on as well. Or you could put them even on like a kitchen towel rack. That's also a great option as well. So you can do that. Now, what you will do once you've finished designing all of your items, and you can make multiple pages, is that you can then export your file. Okay, so what I would do is I'd go export. And for 3D printing, you would want to do an STL file. So download that as an STL file, and that will export your file to the correct item. Now, depending on the printer that you'll be using, you can then drag that STL file and import it onto your 3D printer software, and that will then give you all the options to then print. The great thing about TinkerCad is anything you create, it saves along the way, so you don't have to keep saving your item. It will automatically do it. So if I go back to my dashboard, I haven't hit save once. It will then show my tactile sensory tool. And if I wanted to make another one, I could make another one. But that is how you create tactile sensory tools. Obviously, it's really important to try and keep them as safe as possible for your students. So try not to accidentally make sharp items using the cone, or even the roof might be a bit sharp, or the pyramid item might be too sharp. But a really great option is to use the scribble tool. Again, it's important to try and keep a ruler next to you to keep in mind on how big the item is that you're designing. But that is everything that there is to it. So yeah, thank you all for joining today, and I hope that you are able to create some tactile sensory tools for your classroom too.